Welcome to NACME's podcast, Innovating Forward, where we talk to inspiring people and ask, hey, what makes you tick? Join me, Christopher Greaves,
and me, Emily Evangelista,
for thoughtful conversations with visionary leaders whose fingers are firmly on the pulse of technology, business, and innovation. We hope that each of our chats leaves you with some practical wisdom that makes your life better and brings you a step or two closer to realizing your dreams.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Innovating Forward. I am your host, Emily Evangelista, and today we have a very special guest. Here we have Mauricio Iglesias. Mauricio Iglesias is the CEO of Bastazo, a cybersecurity company focused on mitigating risk and exposure for operational technology. He attended the University of Arkansas on the ECAF scholarship, which was funded by NACME, and there he studied electrical engineering. After graduation, Mauricio started his career at Texas Instruments, then founded and exited his own company. He later worked at Capital One before taking on his current role of Bastazo. Thank you once again, Mauricio. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk to us and tell us about your life. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. First of all, thank you for having me on. I'm happy to be here and glad that you and Chris were able to invite me on.
Yeah, no, definitely. As I mentioned in your bio, Mauricio is an ACME scholar. So I guess my very first question that I like to ask most of our guests here is how impactful was receiving a scholarship during your university, during your college years for you?
You'll probably hear this from everybody that gets scholarships, but it's the way that I got through college. Without it, I wouldn't have been able to do a lot of things that I was able to do, such as focus on both the business side and the engineering side. And that's really what led me to be able to be where I am today. Instead, I would have probably been having to do some work study and be focused a little bit more on working in order to pay for my college. Of course, receiving that scholarship was huge. It also led to me being able to get amazing opportunities. So the way that I started my career at Texas Instruments was actually through internships. And the internships that landed in college, both at Texas Instruments and at a company called Zico, I landed because of some of the opportunities that I had to go to some major conferences. And at those major conferences, I was able to meet people that already worked there, and they started mentoring me on, hey, this is the way that you'll get into these specific internships. And they took my resume, helped me get in there. And again, it was all because of the scholarship that I got. Because person in charge of that program, he was really adamant about us getting into internships and focusing on our studies and not having to go and work to pay for the school.
No, that's definitely very impactful. Releasing the stress of a financial burden on top of being a student, it's not a great mix. So we totally understand.
No, it's not.
It's really not. You talked a little bit about how your internships really helped you. So what was a really pivotal moment for you in college that kind of pushed you? Because you're currently at a cybersecurity company. Was there an internship that you had that focused on cybersecurity? Was it you had an internship in a certain field? Because you do have a degree in electrical engineering. And you're like, no, I'm not going to do this. What was it?
Okay, so this is actually my first foray into cybersecurity. My background that actually led to me understanding the need to come over here. So whenever I was at Zico, which was my first internship, my job title was a controls engineer. And with controls, what I was doing was programming PLCs, which is programmable logic controllers, in order to run these physical processes. And during that internship, I was actually sent down to another country in South America. And there was a big petrochemical plant that they were working on. And it's actually one of the largest pretty much in the world. And I actually got to program the process of heating the actual chemical and oil. And I was in college at the time. I had just gone through my sophomore year. And so for me, it was like, oh, this is like a pretty big deal. This thing is like $1 billion. And now I'm getting to ensure that it's exactly at 400 degrees. Okay, like this is awesome. So after doing that, many years later, whenever I was asked to come and run Bastazo, actually last year, whenever I was asked to, I understood, hey, operational technology is partially like these PLCs that I had been working on, the actuators that were managing the process that I worked on, and a few of the other kind of tidbits that manage these physical processes. And at Bastazo, like you mentioned at the beginning, we're focused on operational technology. And operational technology is really these physical processes that take care of what we on a daily basis kind of touch, not actually touch, but touch our lives. So everything from like electric utilities to the oil and gas that we get in our cars, the water that we drink, everything at manufacturing facilities is all carried out by operational technology. So that's what led me to understanding the need for cybersecurity in that area. And really why I decided, hey, this would be awesome to go and run, and why I decided to come over.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. It sounds like a very important job. We do not want our operational facilities getting hacked. That'd be great. Before we really dive into how you got to become CEO of Bastazo, we want to backtrack a little bit. How did you envision your future to be like? Did you imagine yourself being a CEO of a company like this? Or did you growing up, did you have another career inspiration? So what was that like for you?
Yeah, so I've always been the dreamer type. I've always put these crazy goals in front of me. And actually, whenever I was in high school and middle school, I wanted to become a neurosurgeon. So I actually went to school. Whenever I entered the university, I was doing biomedical engineering. Then I actually switched to chemical engineering, and then finally to electrical engineering after the first year. And that was just based off of what I started learning. And eventually I decided I didn't want to go do more school. I wanted to do my 4 years, get the degree, and then focus on both the business and engineering side, because that's really what my passion became. And so whenever I decided to switch from this goal of becoming a neurosurgeon to going into like the business engineering side of things, I put a goal that I wanted to either one, become the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, or build a company large enough to make it to the Fortune 500. So yeah, pretty lofty. So I always had a dream of, yeah, I would become a CEO. It was really about, hey, what's the right path to get there? And then over time, really things have evolved for me into, I would rather be truly impactful as early as possible. And that's actually why, even though I was working at TI, I ended up building my own company to start off. And that was like a foray that I went into for a couple of years. Of course, that company was completely different. It was on the financial services side. And after exiting that back in 2021, I then went back to work for Fortune 500 at Capital One, learned more about the product side. And that kind of led me to understand how to, one, manage big engineering teams, two, build products specifically in the software realm for customers. And then eventually that led to me being able to take on this role and hopefully succeed. I feel like I'm succeeding so far, but I feel like there's a lot more work to do. And really, that's the one thing I keep learning, is that it's always going to be evolving, but I always have to be a few steps ahead in order to ensure that I get to where I want to be.
Yeah, that definitely is very interesting. So you've always had that kind of entrepreneurship. No, maybe not always, but you always had I want to be a boss. You can't get far if you don't dream about getting far. You got to always push yourself.
Exactly.
And obviously with having those really big dreams, do you ever have a moment where you're like, maybe what was I even thinking? You try to go this far, or do you ever have a moment where you really wanted to quit, or you felt like you had imposter syndrome, thinking, I don't think I could really do this? Or I know, at least for me, sometimes, especially breaking into a field which is predominantly white dominated, especially as a woman, or white man dominated, it's like I don't see people in the room that look like me, who share the same cultural backgrounds as me, or things like that. Have you ever had those moments? And if you did, how did you overcome that?
Of course, all the time. Ever since I was little, there would sometimes always be that little doubt in there. And so for me, it was always getting past that, pushing past it, and not letting it slump me down. And that's really something that you'll talk to pretty much anybody in entrepreneurship, and everybody says that it's difficult, and it truly is. Sometimes you'll be having a day where you're like, oh, everything is not going well. Are we even going to make it? And then suddenly the next day you have something big come up that's, oh, we're going to make it. And then a few days later, you'll go right back to it, to feeling like, hey, I might not be able to get this thing where I want to go. And again, it's just a repeating process. And that's why it always comes down to the mindset of, hey, I'm in charge of this. I believe in myself. And even whenever I don't, I still have to believe in myself because I have so many people that I'm accountable to and that I'm doing this for. And it's not just for myself. And that's what pushes me in my daily role. And you were talking about the whole not being the same as everybody else. One thing that I run into a lot is I'm usually the youngest person in pretty much every room that I step into. Right now I'm 29. In my previous company that I ran and previous companies that I was working at, Texas Instruments and Capital One, a lot of the time I was the youngest. And whenever I started off my career, it would be hard to get my point across because of that. But over time, I built that voice of, hey, I trust what goes through my head. I trust the thoughts and the decisions that I make. And I'm able to push that out there. And that's really what has led to me being able to do a lot more in my career and really make it to where I am today.
Yeah, so confidence sounds like a really big part of it too. You got to
Yes.
have confidence in yourself and what you're doing and belief in what you're doing. So thank you for that answer. That's very inspirational. Sometimes it does get hard. Sometimes you think, even in college, you're taking a really hard course. You might have just failed an exam. It's over. I'm never going to make it. I'm not going to get this degree. And then you push through it and then you finish your degree, right? And congratulations on becoming a CEO. That's not really something everybody does. And you dream big. So you could say that your dreams came true in a way.
Yeah, there's still a lot more to do, but hey, I'm down the right path right now and
Mhm.
I'm laying out the small steps to get there.
And definitely what you mentioned about being the youngest in a room, that could be very intimidating as well, especially in a field where maybe you're surrounded by people who have years and years of experience. As technology is always advancing, do you feel like maybe sometimes you being younger was an asset? Oh, technology, Gen Z is different than millennials in terms of we grew up with technology and we guess I get better hand of it. And obviously the millennials have an advantage over the boomers. So how did you feel like that? Or did you feel like they sometimes shunned you out because you were younger?
No, what makes a difference is really the way of thinking. And what I mean by that is whenever I go into a room, I really do try to look at things from a different perspective. Whereas the people that might have a ton of experience, yeah, they'll have their experience, but that kind of puts them in a box sometimes and they'll continue thinking in that box. And yes, sometimes they'll come outside. But because I'm either new to the field or have a fresh, not boxed down way of thinking, I'm able to bring new ideas. And that's really what has led to me being able to push more, both on my team where I'm at currently and then my teams in the past. And that has really given me a major voice in whatever room I'm in, whether it's the conference room or in like a Zoom meeting with some people across the world. Yeah, that's really what makes a difference. And it might come, actually, it does come with the fact that I'm younger and don't have the experience. And like we mentioned before, the confidence piece plays into that as well, because at first, if you're not confident, but you have these new ways of thinking, you're not going to speak up and say that because you're going to think that you're going to be wrong. Eventually, over time, I just didn't care. Even if I was wrong, I would still speak up because, hey, there was a chance that I would be right. And it's okay. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to be wrong all the time. And actually, that's at my first internship with Texas Instruments, my boss, at the end of the summer, he told me something that has always stuck with me. It's okay to fail. And before that, I had always been scared of failing. I would get super anxious anytime that I would need to present because I would feel the pressure of, hey, I need to succeed at everything that I do. And if I don't, then I'm a failure. But after he said that to me, I put that into my head that it is okay to fail. And that's really what has pushed me way further ahead than where I would probably be today.
So you actually answered a question I already was planning on asking you. So like, obviously there's going to be people who are going to be younger or still in college, maybe even in high school listening to this podcast. Can you please give some advice on developing that confidence? Because it seems like you're in a field where you need to be confident. So how do you develop that? You did say, don't be afraid of failing. Those words are very impactful for you, but you have any more words of wisdom to share?
Yes. Okay. Confidence really does come from how you grew up. I will say that. And it comes more from the belief that you, of course, that you have in yourself. But whenever you set a goal for yourself and you truly start driving towards that goal and are seeing yourself constantly reaching little milestones that show you that you are able to make it to those specific goals, you'll start building your confidence. So even if, say, you didn't have, and I was lucky, I will say I had a very supportive family, very supportive teachers, very supportive mentors throughout my early childhood, teenage years, into college, and beyond. But a lot of people don't have that. And I've been around people that haven't had that and have mentored others that haven't had it. And really, that's the way that they've been able to build it, is constantly seeing that they're able to do things that they didn't think that they might have been able to. But you have to start small sometimes. And it's okay to start small, because once you succeed with one thing, you're going to feel like you can do a lot more, and then you can go to the bigger things. But even if you fail, like I mentioned, it's okay. Just keep pushing forward. And the more you keep pushing forward, the more your confidence will grow.
Yeah, that's definitely, sometimes it is that hard part, just reminding yourself you could just continue pushing forward. You can't dwell on your failures, because then you're just going to stay in the past. That was the past already. Um,
Exactly.
I just, yeah, exactly. I want to shift a little bit back to your career and exactly did you become a CEO? What were the moments in your career that kind of pushed you, or how did you get apply for the job? Did you just find it on LinkedIn? I feel like how do you even become a CEO? I feel like that's a really big part of a question that I would personally have, and I know a lot of people are curious. Were you selected? Was it a post on LinkedIn? Because please share a post with me if I want to be a CEO too.
It's actually a really interesting story. So I'm really involved in like the tech community across the US. And I enjoy going to events in New York and San Francisco. And I was actually coming back from an event in New York City when I was doing a layover in Dallas. And in Dallas, my flight was actually supposed to leave at 8 p.m. And that flight actually ended up getting delayed and pushed back. But as I was there sitting and waiting for my flight, I saw somebody and I was like, that person looks very familiar to me. And I got closer and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Dr. Mantooth. And Dr. Mantooth was a professor of mine in college. And so, of course, I would recognize him, but it had been many years. So I was like, is that him? Is it not? Then finally, we started boarding the flight at 12 p.m. And so we got on the flight, and lucky enough, he was sitting right behind me. And so whenever I saw
Oh,
him, I was
wow.
like, you're Dr. Mantooth, right? And he was like, yes, I am. And I was like, oh, nice to see you again. And we started chatting about my time in school and then what he had been working on. And Dr. Mantooth, if you Google him, he's major researcher at the University of Arkansas, super smart guy, super talented in power electronics. Yeah, everybody knows him in the power electronics field. Actually, whenever I was at Texas Instruments, a lot of people, whenever I would mention the University of Arkansas, the first thing that they would say is, oh, that's where Dr. Mantooth is. So pretty infamous. Now, as he was telling me about what he had been working on and then what I had been doing, he mentioned Bastazo. And he told me that he, along with a few other professors, had started this company and that they were looking for somebody to run it. And at the time, I had just came back from New York. I had been with like other CEOs, but I enjoyed what I was doing at the time. So I told him, oh, that's great. I'll actually let you know if I think about somebody, and give me your contact information. I have a few thoughts in mind. Now, that flight actually ended up getting canceled immediately after that conversation. So we all got off the plane, and I ended up having to drive home back to Arkansas that day. And so a few months went by, and I had started thinking, okay, I'm ready for the next thing. I had done my time at Capital One, and I decided, okay, what's next for me? And that's whenever I was like, okay, Dr. Mantooth told me about this. I wonder if they're still looking for somebody. So I reached back out to him and asked him, hey, Dr. Mantooth, are you guys still looking for somebody to run the company? And lucky enough, he said, yes, we are. So I spoke to him pretty much a few days later, spoke to the board, spoke to the founders. I actually did a lot of research directly into what they had been building. I looked up a lot of the patents. That way I could speak to it. That way I could understand and make an informed decision on, hey, is this the right thing for me? Because it's a startup and startups are really hard. Startups aren't like at companies where you already have a ton of backing. Over here, it's fight or die pretty much every single day. And so for me, I had to make an informed decision on, is this going to be successful? Can I truly make it successful? And after talking to the team, understanding everything, I made the decision of, hey, it's the right thing and I would like to do this. And then that's whenever they offered me officially the role. That's how I got here. It was just by chance, actually.
I wouldn't say just by chance. Obviously, you were qualified, so they thought that you were the perfect person. But I guess my follow-up question is, did you particularly have a special connection with this professor during college? Was it that, did you like constantly go to office hours, or it was really just by chance that he recognized you or you remembered him?
So it was just by chance. So I'll be honest, I was not a good student in college. I was the kind that I would go to class to learn and do good on my tests. But my focus again was, hey, I want to do both the business and engineering side, but I had to mix them together. So for me, being deep in the engineering side wasn't too much of my focus. And so he remembered me and I did decent in his class. That's a good thing. I got a B in it. So that's good enough, but I wasn't the outstanding. And you'll hear this a lot from people that are entrepreneurs. A lot of them aren't good students because our focus isn't directly on like this college thing. It's the overall experience of, hey, I have this goal. Now, to get to that goal, I need to make myself into a rounded individual, build relationships, understand multiple kind of aspects and start working towards that goal specifically. And yeah, that's why it was pretty random. But like I mentioned, the biggest thing is the relationship part of it, is being able to speak to people. And whenever you do see people that you either have known from the past, just talk to them and really talk to everybody. That, especially if you sit next to somebody on a plane, talk to them because you never know who you'll meet.
Yeah, be social.
Oh yeah.
I feel like there's a stereotype with some STEM students, oh, they're super antisocial. Sometimes I think that plays along with the confidence. You have to break out of your shell, not be so introverted, because sometimes you really do never know who you meet. As one of my coworkers just commented, the takeaway for what you told us so far is really carpe diem, seize the day. You gotta seize every moment,
It's
whether it's good or
always,
bad. It seems
yeah.
like always. Yeah, but now that you are CEO and you mentioned that it was more of a startup when you joined, what have you done as a CEO? What does a CEO do at a company like Bastazo?
All right, so startup, you do everything, okay? The only thing that I don't do on a daily basis is actually program, but everything from marketing, sales, building partnerships, doing all the creative side, talking about the business to politicians, traveling to other countries, customer sites, doing product research as to what is it the customer wants, what is it that they need, and then building out the vision for, hey, in 1, 2 years, we need to be here. So I need to do these specific steps in order to get there, and then guiding the entire company in that direction. And yeah, a little bit of everything. Operationally, I have to be doing a lot of contract work. I have to be on the legal side, talking to lawyers all the time. Yeah. But as time goes on, your focus has to, and the company grows, your focus starts coming more down into being a true representative of a company. So it'll go from this whole, hey, I'm carrying on all these different roles to there's only specific things that I need to focus on a day in, day out basis in order for the company to succeed. And I'm not there yet. I'm still doing the whole, this is the whole everything type of thing. But what I'm working on right now is a lot of partnerships and figuring out, okay, who are the people that we need to work with to ensure that we're successful in a year or two, that we're able to grow our revenue pretty much as fast as possible because we're now in a growth phase, talking to politicians in order to, since we're in the cybersecurity realm, cybersecurity is a big issue. And so they're talking to me, I'm talking to them, understanding the needs of everything from like a political aspect. But then also, whenever I travel, I just came back from Israel. We had a few partnerships over there. We did some testing directly over there and ensuring that, again, we're building the right things. So.
No, that's very interesting. It sounds like to be the CEO of Bastazo, you have to be a jack of all trades a little bit. You'd have to be able to wear different hats at different times. And even as you're describing what do you do, I can hear the business aspect. So what were some things that you did in your career to really develop that business side? I know you mentioned that you worked at Capital One, which is a Fortune 500 company, but even in college, like what did you really do to build up that entrepreneurial business side of yourself that I feel has been very impactful to your career?
Yeah, it's a good question. So in college, I started off actually taking a lot of business courses. So I actually minored in finance and I wanted to learn all aspects of finance. I actually started in high school being interested in the stock market and investing and things like that, which is why I did the finance minor. But then that led to me being interested in how these companies were truly built and understanding what it took for them to build the companies and the leaders, specifically the leaders that truly carried out some amazing companies and amazing products and what they did in order for them to make it happen. And so by studying that, I just had this like knowledge of, hey, all of these things that other people did in order to become successful. So eventually, whenever I got to Texas Instruments, and at Texas Instruments, I was doing product marketing there. So I was product marketing engineer was my title. And in that role, I was actually in charge of P&L for some products and specifically getting them placed directly into companies. So some of the biggest companies in the world, we were doing stuff with automotive companies. And so you can think about the biggest ones that you can think of. Yeah, we sold directly to them. And the chips that I sold were already or are already on the road right now. So I learned a big part of, hey, marketing directly to these major companies, specifically to engineers to get our products placed there. Then I started my own company, and that was back in 2018. That was actually based on the whole financial side that I hadn't been doing since high school. And since I had been working on that for a long time, I had already understood a lot of things. The only thing is, I was not having to do any type of sales, really any type of marketing. The only type of sales and marketing was a fundraise that I did. And after that, no customer interaction. It was just me and my computer. And then eventually I hired people. And so leading a team. And so that was a little bit different than the startup I'm currently running, but it taught me things on the financial side. And so after leaving that business, exiting it and going to Capital One, that's whenever I learned the product side. And on the product side, it was really about understanding the customer, their needs, interviewing them, and then building a thesis around what the customer was saying in order to give them and build the right product. And so we actually ended up monetizing the entire platform while I was there. The teams that I was leading actually grew significantly, built a ton of great technology. And Capital One is unique in being a bank. They call themselves a tech company first, a bank second. So we were able to build a lot of great things. And I was able to influence us to get more teams, more personnel in order to do really innovative things that you wouldn't imagine that a bank was doing. Did a lot of machine learning stuff. And so I started learning the AI and machine learning while I was there. And so eventually, all of this knowledge that I had built up prepared me for what I'm doing now. The financial side, the product side, the marketing side, the sales side while at TI. But even after I came over here, it's completely a different ballgame because I have to be worried about all these different aspects on a day in, day out basis. And so like 30 minutes, I'll be focused on finance. The next hour, I'll be focused on reaching out to customers. The next 30 minutes, I'll have to be talking about some marketing thing. The 30 minutes after that, it'll be something legal. And yeah, that's a different part of it. It's a different monster altogether once you run a startup, but it's fun because it's more challenging.
What you mentioned was really interesting. My takeaways, once again, you definitely wear a lot of hats and you have to do a lot of different things in order to get to where you are. So I guess be well-rounded would be an advice to be a person who's interested in becoming a CEO. You have to be very well-rounded and be able to do a lot of different things. And it sounds like you really know how to build a business from the ground up. What was some really big growing pains that you experienced throughout the trajectory of your career? Like, what was a really big learning moment for you? Maybe you did fail at something and it was like, oh, this is a big lesson for me. Did you have a moment like that?
Oh, yeah. I've had many moments like that. So the one thing I will say in the past year, since I don't come from a cybersecurity background, I've had a huge steep learning curve in order to really understand cybersecurity space specifically, and more importantly, the unique aspects of operational technology security and what's needed. And so having to go from hey, I understand the products that I'm working on, which I did at TI and at Capital One, to now being here and having to go back to kind of school and constantly having to ask my CTO, oh, hey, can you talk to me about this? Can you teach me about it? And my CTO, Kylie, she's amazing. Actually, we did our capstone project together. So we were able to have that relationship already. But she's constantly teaching me new things about cybersecurity, the arena that we're playing in, and where the gaps are. And that's honestly been probably the biggest learning curve of my career so far, because it's something completely abstract and new to me.
Sounds like you're still a student, even after college.
Every single day is about learning. You have to learn every day and then also figure out how to apply what you learned.
Mm. As we are reaching our tail end of our interview or podcast recording, our conversation today, we always like to ask our guests to leave the audience with some words of wisdom, whether it be things that they've learned, things that they want to pass on to the next generation, or just do you have any words of wisdom for our audience today?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I'm going to talk more to the NACME scholars that are out there, because I went through what you guys are doing right now just a few years ago. So it's pretty new, pretty fresh. The one thing I will say about this next generation is they're dreamers and they know how to dream. So keep dreaming, but make sure you put action behind those dreams, because the actions will really get you to those dreams. And people won't hand you things. You won't just be handed. It might seem like I was, and sometimes I feel that way, but it really, Emily, like you mentioned, all of these things that I went through prepared me to be able to be in a place to take this on. And that's really why you need to constantly just be learning and doing new things. So.
That was great advice. So you can't have dreams without action, unless you just want them to just stay dreams. If you want them to be a reality, you really dropped some really important knowledge. You definitely gave us an insight of what you do. And my final question I would have to ask you is, would you have done anything differently?
Honestly, I wish I would have actually focused a little bit more on my classes sometimes. So that's the one thing. We'll talk about NACME here. So yeah, it would have been nice to have a little bit higher a GPA. Yeah.
Yes. So the students out there, please achieve A's, please get your A's. But at the same time, it's also comforting that even if you weren't a 4.0 student, you were still able to be very successful. Your GPA doesn't define you at the same time. It didn't define you, because look at where you are now.
Yeah, it didn't. But I'm the type of person that I like to succeed. So whenever I feel like I didn't fully do my best, it's, I let myself down. And so that's why I would do something different.
Yep. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Thank you once again, Mauricio, for taking the time out of your day and speaking to us and dropping some really important knowledge. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in. We hope that you tune into our next episode and just continue to like and subscribe everything from NACME. Mauricio, anything you would like to say to our audience as we say goodbye?
I think that's everything from my side. I'm glad to be able to speak to you, Emily, and speak to everybody out there. And I hope that this was a really informative podcast.
If you enjoyed this episode and would like to see more from us, please like, subscribe, And don't forget to follow NACME on Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Visit us at nacme.org to learn more about corporate partnership opportunities and NACME programs.